What's up, fam? I'm so glad you guys decided to join me today to check out Focus and to learn about all the cool things that it can do and how it's going to improve your website. And, there's a zillion things I could cover and show you, but, you'll have plenty of time to do all that as you click around, you check out the different pages of the DIY Themes website, some of my other videos as well. You can see all the features and really go deep if you want. But here's the thing. Those features and stuff really don't matter. What matters is the why. Okay? That's what, that's the connection I want us to have. I want you to understand why these things are the way they are. Why Focus is the way it is. You see, a lot of people when they're buying like a WordPress theme are really just thinking in terms of a design. Okay? It's really just the design to them. And the whole point of this video is to show you that it's not really a design. Yes, Focus has a certain look, but I want to tell you the why. The Focus doesn't look the way it looks because I just prefer this particular design aesthetic and wanted to make a design like this. No. Focus doesn't even exist because I wanted to make a design. Focus exists because there is a great need for a system that will allow you to run your website the way you want in 2019 and beyond. There's a lot of boxes, a lot of technical things, a lot of technical, like checklist items you gotta knock off to have a good website. So there's just a zillion things you got to do. There's a lot of requirements, a lot of technical specifications, these types of things. You want to be firing on all those cylinders. So there's always prerequisites, all these little things that kind of affect the outcome. And then we have the number one thing, and that is people. How do people use the internet anymore? Blogs really aren't the same as they were 10 years ago. The way people consume content isn't the same. We do everything now on our phones. We have tiny screens. We used to have big wide screens. But now the greatest growth in screens is in these small, narrow screens. So naturally, that is affecting the way design, is evolving in this landscape. So let's look at Focus, but we're going to talk about the whys. We're not going to talk about what it is. We're going to talk about why it is the way it is. So we're just looking at a default Focus installation here. This is set in readability mode. In some of my other videos, I've covered how it's got Focus content presentation mode, readability mode. You have control over all this stuff. You can change the way this is presented. But the basic design, why does it look like this? Why is it so Spartan? There's nothing flashy going on here. What's the deal? And the deal is that the changing landscape with people having smaller, narrower screens and needing speed and performance. You see, mobile connections are slower than desktop connections, by and large. And then you've got some pressure there just for speed, just because mobile connectivity is not as good. So there's some need for speed there. The other need for speed comes from search engines and just user behavior. And that is search engines are now preferring sites that load very quickly, that prioritize performance and optimization above things like, crazy special looks and that sort of thing. And then, of course, you've got people who actually use stuff, use these websites, and people don't want to wait 10 minutes for things to load. They don't want to scroll through a bunch of, stuff that's not relevant to them on mobile devices. So user behavior plays a huge role here. Big companies that do a lot of e-commerce, like Amazon and Google, both know that the slower your pages are, the lower your sales conversions are. And it's not just sales conversions. It's things like email opt-ins. It's things like people actually reading all of an article that you might write. It's engagement. It's about connecting with people. And if your website is not set up to connect, it's not going to connect as well as it could. And that's really been the thing. That's kind of why Focus emerged. That's what I feel like it has emerged. It's this path that was clearly the right path that sort of started to take shape, and I simply built something to kind of adapt to that shape, this changing environment that we now face. The deal is you need very clear text, you need beautifully formatted text, you need that to be presented quickly and clearly to users. It's about getting right to the point. and not wasting time. It's not about showing off. It's just about getting to the point. That is what people want. Think about it. When you're out and about and you do a search or something like that on your mobile device trying to find information, there's nothing more infuriating than having to wait for ads to load or to scroll through a bunch of stuff that's not relevant to you to hunt for the thing that you want. It'd be better if, boom, the stuff you were seeking just shows up right away. No fluff, nothing in my way. Just give me what I want and let me get out. User behavior, it verifies that is indeed a superior approach. People want what they want. They want to get out. Don't step in here with a bunch of offers and don't interrupt me. Just let me do my thing, and that's our transaction, and then we move on. But the thing is, so it might sound limiting. A lot of people kind of encounter this new reality that we face of this, don't give me fluff, give me the meat. A lot of people feel like, oh, well, that means my opportunities and stuff are limited and my flexibility is limited. And that is not true at all. As you will see with Focus, this can actually be the key to freedom, to run a great website and to be able to manage a website over time. You see, I've worked with thousands and thousands of websites over the last 13 and a half years. I have seen about everything you can imagine with WordPress websites. I have seen very successful websites get into some very dark places because they try to do too much. I have seen the challenges that very small operations and people with no budget essentially face. People just trying to make it work on their own. People trying to build their own website. I know it's tough out there. I know that the customization landscape is incredibly important. And in my view, the way the WordPress theme ecosystem and plugins and all that stuff has evolved hasn't really spoken to you, the user who needs to be able to perform some customizations and some like plugin integrations, things like that. Things that are really basic. So basic idea, for example, I need to connect an email form. I have my email form on my website and it needs to connect to MailChimp or Constant Contact or whatever my service provider is. I need to be able to deploy these email forms where I want. And that is such a simple thing to do, and yet when we actually try to pull this off on our websites, we find out that it's incredibly technically complicated. It's this never-ending cascade of all these things that are just tough to do, simple ideas that are very tough to pull off. And then there's another tweak to this formula that makes it even harder, and that is this idea that you not only do you have to make it work for you, you have to make your website work for you. Nobody can just sell you a thing that's exactly what you need, so you've got to do some adaptation. And not only do you need to perform that adaptation, but then you need to be able to maintain it over time. Not a trivial thing. And as many of you have found, and any of you who have run a website for a couple of years, this is really going to resonate with you. But the deal is it's very, very difficult to maintain some of these customizations over time. Very difficult. Things can break. You get nervous about updates because you're like, well, if I update this component, are these 6 other components that are reliant upon it going to break? And so basically what this points to is the fact that the customization landscape is very, very poorly designed. It is not there is no system in place to do this. It's just broken. And the fact that it's so fractured, it's all these disparate pieces. This plugin, this 16 different ways to do this. I need to incorporate Google Analytics over here. Like how are you supposed to do all this stuff with 500 different pieces and keep track of it over time? And the answer obviously is that you can't. And I say that because I have walked this path myself. I have all the skills you need to be able to do anything you want with a website. I can do whatever I need to do with a website. But the reality is, some stuff is not worth doing. I've run my business website, DIY Themes, for nearly 11 years now. I've done all sorts of things that were harebrained and I probably shouldn't have tried to do. I've had to sever things that I thought were good ideas that I wasn't able to maintain. And so the reality is it doesn't matter how skilled or unskilled you are. If you bite off more than you can chew, you're setting up an environment for yourself that you will not be able to sustain and maintain. And that doesn't help anyone. And beyond that, it all goes back to this idea about performance and not just speed. Not just speed, not just search engine optimization, not stuff like that, but just performance in general. It's an ethos. It's a way that you operate. It's not just, like I said, it's not just a speed thing. It's not just a rankings thing. It's not like that. Performance is you trying to be your best all the time. You want your website to be operating, firing on all cylinders all the time. It's not good enough to achieve some integration with a plugin. Your site sort of works for a little while. It needs to be rock solid. It needs to work over time. You need systems that work for you and that you can maintain and feel confident in, and not, instead of having this anxiety and this negativity and everything surrounding the evolution of the software that you are relying upon to run your website. And let's that even points back to another idea that's kind of at the root of all this. If your website is just a constant headache, dealing with customizations, worrying about responsive design, or any of these types of things, is that really working for you? I mean, what's the point of a website if not to be facilitative to your goals and your communications, like what you're trying to achieve, connecting with others? Your website is supposed to be a facilitator. It is not supposed to be some big drag that just sucks whenever you have to do anything. But I feel like that's kind of the position we are all in these days. It's like everything's a drag. The website's, website traffic isn't the same as it used to be. It's harder to get attention over to your corner. Sales are a little bit harder to make. Everything seems to be getting more difficult and to be becoming more of a drag, but it doesn't have to be this way. That's not the way technology is supposed to work. Things are supposed to get faster. Things are supposed to get smarter. They're supposed to get easier, and they can. But if you're anything like me, your experience with WordPress over the last decade or so has not really made things that much easier. Some stuff has gotten easier, but it's like there's always some new drag to consider. I don't like that. It doesn't have to be that way, like I said. It just takes a little bit of thought, and you actually have to care. Like, I care that you guys deal with a bunch of crap and are not able to maintain your websites. That bothers me. It's not that hard. We should be able to do this. We should be able to do this without needing to hire a designer or developer. I live in the real world. And in the real world, this is not 2005. We can't just go out and hire a freelancer to help us with our websites. It's an extremely risky venture now because all the talent now works for agencies and stuff, and you can't afford an agency. I suppose DIY Themes, the business, could afford an agency, but it would cost an arm and a leg and would not be worth it to me. Agencies are expensive if you want to retain them. So you have to have a huge budget if you're actually going to hire somebody to help you with your website. And maybe you can get lucky and find a freelancer for a 3-month deal or something like that, and they build your website. But the reality is that person's going to be gone, move on to something else 6 months down the road, a year down the road, and at some juncture in the future, you are going to need big help, and you're going to have nowhere to turn. And so that's the reality of websites these days. You can't really hire someone to help you. You've still got to perform some relatively complex integrations, getting your email forms to work. If you're doing e-commerce, God help you, it's just a tough landscape for someone who doesn't have the skills to do all this themselves to pull off. And even if you do have the skills, it's a tedious bummer. It takes a long time and a lot of effort to do anything right. And that's really what this boils down to. We need to operate correctly, like we want a good website. We need to perform some of these integrations. We cannot turn anywhere for help. This is a tough situation. And so to respond to this challenge, I have built Focus. That's why it exists. Focus says we can do this together. You will not need to hire, you can, if you want, you can hire a designer and developer and do all that stuff. But Focus is set up with some guardrails that make it easy for us to stay in between the lines and to be able to pull off these mission critical website features ourselves. And here's the key thing. It's not good enough just to do all this stuff. The end result, the website has to be fast. This brings us to the next point. If you have used any of these products in WordPress that have really gained a lot of traction over the last 3-4 years, such as page builders, such as these omnibus themes with page builders in them, you probably know that the end result is generally very, very slow pages and a very, very slow website. That is not helpful to anyone. I can't tell you how many people I have come across, and especially in the last 2 years, because this has really sort of ramped up and everybody started to use these like page builders and omnibus themes. Divi, Avada, X, just throw some names out there. You guys have heard of these, maybe even looked at some of them, thought they looked pretty good. And the deal is they look good because the promise is so seductive. The promise that we can somehow, even despite the fact that we have no skill, no skill about building websites, we have we don't know CSS, we don't know HTML, we don't know PHP, we're not going to be dealing with any of those things. But yet the promise is that we're going to be able to make this gorgeous website with a design that really, speaks to our egos, and somehow be able to do all these complex technical integrations and maintain this whole thing over time, and the thing's going to, look and work great. Many of you know that this has been a huge lie. A huge lie. But like I said, I can't even tell you how many sites I've run across in the last couple years that followed this route, bought the lie, attempted to build out their sites on these platforms, and then the end result is their pages take 12 to 15 seconds to load or worse. And, and then they're like, oh my gosh, I don't even know how to go about untangling this mess and optimizing it. And the answer with these omnibus themes is it's not worth it for you to optimize it. I've done it a couple times, and the amount of effort it took to try and get the performance up to even up to like a reasonable level, not even a good level, nothing I would ever accept in my own, ecosystem. The amount of work it takes is just unbelievable. And I don't want to use any bad words on here, but, I call it uneffing up a website. It's very hard work. Okay, if you were to try and come to me and have me perform this service on your own website, this uneffing service, if you will, on one of these omnibus themes, I would have to charge you so much money. It would be like $20,000 plus. It would be so much of my time. It would be so tedious and so awful. And what I would have to know and understand to be able to pull this off the right way, you're talking about serious expertise and serious tedium. That's not a good deal. So my point is not that, to trash these other themes and page builders and stuff like that. The point is that this whole operating environment is creating scenarios where we're digging holes that we can never get out of. And that's no good. And so the only option when you have dug a hole so deep that you cannot get out of is to hit the reset button. Unfortunately, we have a reset button with websites. You could load up a new theme. You could start from scratch. You have a chance for redemption in that sense. But I think most of us look at this and think, oh, I've done so much customization. I've put so much work into this. And now my site loads in 12 seconds and it's useless. And I realize it's useless. I achieved what I thought I wanted. And now I stand here on top of this mountain and I look around and I realize this mountain is crap. And my first thing I want to say is it is not your fault. It is not your fault. The way the whole ecosystem has developed has put you into this corner. And you didn't know better. And how could you know better? As far as I know, I'm like the first person standing here evangelizing this, saying, look, we've been led to the wrong place. Under the guise of a lot of seduction, we thought we could do this stuff. And it turns out we can't really complete the whole picture. We could get a nice design, but unfortunately our sites are really slow and impossible to manage. So maybe we could have an environment that we can manage really well, and maybe we have to just change our perceptions about what we actually want for a design. It's worth mentioning. Let's look at this real quick. I will show you. We will put this little website demo I've got in the back here in a view that's a mobile view. And I'll try and make it a little bit bigger. Okay. So here's a mobile view. You see so many designs that have like a big picture here at the top, and then like I call it a page layout where you've got like, the content and stuff is in the middle and it's like boxed in to make it look like a page, kind of make it, to give it some real world type qualities on this digital interface that we're looking at. Maybe it looks like a page of a book sitting on a desk or something like that. These little design quirks, they don't matter. They don't matter anymore because of this, because of what you are looking at. All those little fancy tweaks to make your site look like, it looks like a jukebox. It looks like a page of a book. Doesn't matter. People on mobile devices don't see any of it. What you are looking at is the fastest growing segment of your website audience, and none of that old design stuff, a lot of these cutesy things that we did or kitschy things that were the norm, they just don't apply anymore. Heck, even loading stuff up across the page horizontally. You see this all the time with these sales pages on, company websites or whatever. Here, I'll give you an example from DIYthemes.com. From the existing DIY themes, the old version of my website, I make this sin. You've made this sin too, I'm sure. Look at this. These elements that span across. If we switch to a mobile view, these things don't convey the same way. These elements stacked horizontally don't have any meaning in an environment, in a mobile environment that's really narrow screen. So like even doing this, you can say, oh, well, you just do this on desktop and then change it for mobile. Okay, sure, that's what everyone has done the last 5-6 years. But now, as of about September of 2018, Google said, hey, we are now switching to a mobile-first indexing schema. And that means if your website is different on mobile versus what it is on desktop, and not just by looks, but really it means like if stuff shows on desktop but doesn't show on mobile, which is very common to do with certain types of design, certain elements just don't work on mobile. So a lot of designers will simply remove them or hide their display on mobile devices. What Google said is no. We will only consider what is on your mobile, what gets conveyed to mobile devices, to be your actual website. So let's say you were ranking for certain things that you are now disambiguating on mobile. Well, you won't rank for those things anymore. Google says, well, that's not even part of your site anymore. This is a very big development because it points the finger directly at the fixes a lot of people have made to accommodate mobile design quirks in mobile environments and desktop environments. And it says, no. You got to take the same approach. And so that has been a huge factor in making Focus look the way it does. Focus looks like this because it's essentially the same look on all devices. It just expands to make better use of the available space when it is there. But there was absolutely no difference, HTML-wise, in terms of what displays, what doesn't display, in the Focus design between a mobile environment and a desktop environment. Like I said, that is a big deal for search engine optimization moving forward. And it more speaks to the reality of the situation now. Like I said, little design quirks and stuff that showed up on desktop but didn't show up on mobile, they just don't matter anymore. So stop making them. It's just extra stuff that's going to have to load in a mobile environment. You can't just, you can go through some pretty crazy stuff, but a normal person's never going to do this. A normal person's not going to somehow separate the CSS styles and the JavaScript stuff that affects a mobile site versus a desktop site, or these views. They're just not going to be doing that. The answer is not to do some crazy, hypersensitive organizational system and try to tweak it all the time. Say, oh, this is perfect for desktop now and this is perfect for mobile. No. The solution is just to take a more simple approach that works everywhere. That is the easiest way to do it. That approach preserves performance, but it also preserves sanity and maintenance and sustainability. It's a better approach. You've heard this idea, I'm sure, like the singularity, okay? Well, this is the singularity approach to building a website in 2019. Convey the same thing everywhere. Do the fewest weird tweaks outside of that. Like, people don't care. Your visitors do not care. Your visitors come to your site through a search, and they're looking for something specific. If you are unable to deliver that something, no amount of fancy design or little other, doodads or whatever, no, that stuff's not going to matter. The user's there for a particular reason, and if you are unable to deliver quickly and clearly, you will lose. That is the new landscape we are dealing with. And so, does that mean you can't have cool design customizations? No, but it does mean that what qualifies as a cool design customization is not the same in 2019 as it was in 2015. The landscape is always changing, and it is up to us to adapt to it. But we want to adapt and take some power back. See, this is the problem. All the adaptations, in my view at least, all the adaptations that have occurred since about 2010, right when responsive design started to ramp up, a lot of the accommodations we've made have not made it easier for us to run a website at all. Responsive design made it harder to do my job. I had to really consider mobile environments and desktop environments, and always doing this sensitive dance between the two, trying to make sure that I implement some new thing on my design. Oh, I need to go back and make sure this is perfect in mobile. Oh, there's some problems. I need to adjust these. It's this never-ending, give and take, and shuffling the deck chairs on the Titanic to get things to work. And it's madness. I'm very skilled on websites, and yet even attempting to run this stuff over time was just too challenging, too tedious. I don't want to do it. It needs to be simpler. And so this general discontent, and seeing that the real path here, the path that we need to take, is simpler. We need to quit doing all this little dancing for mobile, dancing for desktop, trying to do this, trying to do that. Nobody cares. Visitors are myopic. They want what they want, and they want to get it quickly, and they want to get out. And that's fine. That is okay. The reason that's okay is because your website is successful when your goals align with your users' goals. That's how it works. And so if your goal is to have a fancy design, but your user doesn't care about that, those two things are not aligned. Your user just wants quick information. If you're loading some huge hero image at the top of a page that's 2 megabytes, and it takes way longer for that image to show up tiny on the mobile device because it had to load all 2 megabytes of that big old image before they could see content, that didn't help anyone. What was the point of that image? It did nothing. It served you because you just like this, but the visitor doesn't care. The visitor just, had to wait for this to load before they could get what they wanted. So you see, this whole idea of alignment is so crucial now. And nothing that has been built in WordPress and that's gotten popular in the last 3-4 years is focused on alignment. It's not focused on performance. It's not focused on making it sustainable for you who have limited technical expertise, you who don't want to be editing files and dealing with code. It has not made it easier for you to do what you need to do. I only care about your website success. And I know that your website success depends on a lot of things that maybe you're not aware of. A lot of things that, there's just a lot of gotchas. Your website success depends on you not digging holes you can't get out of. That's the reality of the situation. And so that's why Focus exists. That's why Focus looks the way it does. The landscape has dictated that this is the design that we need. Now, this design has a couple of different options for displaying on desktop, on mobile, no matter what presentation style you choose. It all boils down to essentially the exact same thing. It's just some text, it's formatted nicely, that's about all users see, and there's some vertical white space between elements, there's some white space on the sides and whatnot, but really, once you get down to a mobile environment, it's like, the gig is up at that point. You can't really get away with anything, you just got to deliver. And that's actually very freeing and very awesome, and it kind of informs everything else that we do. We just need to deliver. Let's deliver. Let's deliver something that works for users, that we can maintain, and that is a pleasure to run, and not that's a constant drag. Like, oh, you're gonna need to add this new thing to your website. I just know, because we know the pain that is going to bring now. We know the uncertainty that's going to bring. We know we don't know how to get from A to B, and we know we're going to have to, go out and figure it out. And if we're not technically minded, if we don't have a lot of resources, that sucks. And I'm sick of that. And like I said, the only reason we're there now is because nothing in the WordPress ecosystem serves our needs. Our needs are simplicity. Our needs are not fancy doodads and crap. Okay? We need to focus. That's why it's called Focus. This is what we need. This design is not the design that I necessarily favor aesthetically. This is the design that is needed. This is what the landscape says we must do. That's why it exists. Focus is emergent. Focus is not something that is sort of like some sort of subjective designy thing, which is exactly how design has been approached forever on the internet. We want a design that looks good. We want it that appeals to us. It does the, I want a fancy image with this pink twirly thing over on the side. Like, no. Stop it. Focus. Focus on what matters. Focus on delivering something you can maintain. Focus on delivering something that is going to work seamlessly everywhere. Focus on something that is going to be fast. Focus on something that is not going to be screwed up from the get-go, and then you screw it up worse because you're lumping on a bunch of plugins that all break rules and don't do things the right way, which is inevitable, by the way. If you're building a website, you're going to need to add stuff. You buy Focus today, it's not a complete suite for your website. You want to do certain types of marketing. You're going to want to incorporate certain things. Maybe you're a realtor, for example, and you need to incorporate certain, real estate specific things. Bottom line, you have specific requirements. You're going to have to do things. And if you start with a really great foundation and add things, at least you have a chance of pruning this garden. But if you start with a crappy foundation already and load up all the other crappy stuff from the WordPress ecosystem, what do you think that's going to leave? Crap times crap equals what? It equals your website right now, which you cannot maintain. And you know this. I hate that for you. I hate that you are in that situation. I am here today telling you you have an opportunity to make a positive decision for you, one that allows you to take some power back, take some control of your website, and actually have an environment where you can do it. And it's not just you. You're not going to be able to do it alone. Websites are complex. And that's part of the deal with Focus as well. Focus is a community. And so this whole idea that it's not just you, you're going to need some advice. And I know that I'm really kind of the hub of this advice. That means I have to have a way to be able to help you, but you being many thousands of people, I have to be able to do that effectively. I'm only one man, though. I can only help so many people. I can only speak with so many people, on a one-to-one basis and try to help them. So I need my ability to help you to be able to scale. Because like I said, you need to start with a great foundation, that is Focus. But you're going to have to do the stuff that you're going to have to do. There's no getting around this. And you're going to need help. And you can't hire a developer or designer because they're all with all the good ones are with agencies now, and you can't afford an agency. So you need help. You don't have any way to get it. I'm your last resort. But the good news for you is that I can help you. I can do it. You can do it. We can all do this together. Here's why I can help you. Focus. It's not just a design. In fact, what it started as was not a design. It started as this challenge. This was the challenge that I had. Can I create an environment that is so patternized and so modular and employs all of these good principles that allow me to use and reuse things and to be able to disseminate certain knowledge out to the maximum number of people? Can I create an environment that allows me to do that? So, for example, the customization landscape is infinite. There's infinite things you might want to do with your website. Okay? So it's really hard. You can't really write a program around infinity. You can try, but you'll be working on that program forever. And so the challenge there is knowing that people are going to want to have idiosyncratic design customizations, but that there will be patterns about what people need. You're doing an email form. There's only a few different ways email forms are really going to be output. So that's sort of a patternized route there. E-commerce, same sort of deal. Shopping carts, they all kind of, you know what I mean? There's some patterns that emerge from this customization landscape. And so the challenge is, can I create an environment where I can effectively, not just sort of help, not like pretend to help, actually effectively help large number of people solve these problems? Because now more and more people are getting lumped into this basket every day. The basket of needing to do things to their website, not really being able to do it themselves, and not being able to hire any help to do it. So the need and the demand is still there. You need to do stuff with your website. So what? You don't have a budget, can't hire an agency, can't do it yourself. You still need to be able to do stuff. I don't want to see all this stuff dropping off the internet just because you didn't have $25,000 to hire an agency. I don't want to see stuff dropping off because you didn't have the skills coming in to do it. Oh, you need a website. Website is communication, right? You need to be able to communicate with people on this medium. There's no reason that the technical requirements to get in 2019 should be so high that you can't do what you need to do. And again, so that's why Focus exists. Focus is actually a system, a patternized system that allows me to start solving these problems for you. I can start disseminating answers for you that allow you to integrate this email form and actually tweak the way it looks in a way that you like, in a way that empowers you without needing a developer. And without asking you to do anything that's unsavory. I'm not asking you to go into any code. The last resort, and the only reason that this type of customization even exists in Focus is actually for flexibility for ninjas, people like myself who want to do programmatic things that are a little more powerful than what you might be able to do through an interface. That stuff is possible with Focus, but that is by no means the way it is set up for you to operate. Focus is set up for you to operate from inside the WordPress admin. There's stuff you want to do. There's basic elements of your site. This stuff is intuitive to you. You've got modular content. You've got navigation menus. You've got post boxes where stuff outputs. This is all basic stuff that you have control over. Even design settings, things like that. You're used to customizing your design, but the reality is all the design customizations tools you've used spit out a bunch of crap and make your website slower. Focus is extremely streamlined. You have tons of design control, and the base design stuff spits out a style sheet that's 21.5 kilobytes. It's tiny. In the current landscape, this is the tiniest, most efficient thing you have ever seen. And so the why? What's the why? The why is the landscape is bloated and awful. You need some design customization tools that are light, that are quick, that aren't going to make your website slower if you customize, because customization, as I've already said, is a fundamental thing that you're going to want to do. If you customize and that necessarily makes your website worse, well then I'm going to say you're working with some bad tools. Customization, there's nothing inherently negative about customization and performance. It's how you do it. And Focus includes a ton of stuff, a ton of detailed thought that goes into it that makes it so that you can pull these things off while preserving performance. You can do the things that you're going to need to do. That's the why. That's why this stuff looks like this. That's why these design controls, for example, are not in the WordPress customizer. That would make your whole environment slower and fatter, like every other WordPress theme. If it works like everything else, you're going to get the same problems like everything else. So that's why Focus looks different. That's why your interactions with it are a little bit different. This was needed. How about this? Let's look at the way we mess with templates in Focus. Instead of looking at a bunch of files, I'm going to pull this over here. I can't believe I'm doing this, but I'm going to pull this over. Here's an FTP client window, okay? And we'll look at Genesis, another popular theme. These are theme files. If you want to make changes to certain templates, you got to know what file name to look for, and then you'd have to open it up. I'm going to open this. I can't even believe this happens in 2019. And you would edit it, or use they provide some hooks and filter leverage so you can have a custom functions file and then make some changes without actually having to edit any of these core files directly. This actually happens in 2019, mind you. It's actually the norm in WordPress for extensive customization is to take on this level of responsibility with code and dealing with files. I'm using an FTP client to FTP into my server to edit files? Like, really? This is what you have to do with other WordPress themes to edit your templates. With Focus, you have a visual editor at least. Now, I don't recommend that an amateur go into this. If you are just a basic, you just want to make a website, you don't really have any technical skill, you don't understand the WordPress template system, you don't understand HTML, you don't understand CSS, you don't want to understand those things, well, this is too advanced an editor for you. There's no reason to be in here. But the bottom line is, this is a visual interface. It's a visual representation of what I just showed you. This is an easier way to interact with the template environment. This is this makes it easier and more accessible for you to do the things that you're going to need to do. I know that you will need to, everyone in WordPress knows you're going to need to customize your website. The difference is that somebody just throws their hands up and says, well, this this crazy FTP file system with custom functions and all this stuff. This is the standard. This is the WordPress way. This is what we do. This is how it's done. And I say, no, this does not serve the people who actually need help. Why are we throwing people into this environment that's too technically challenging, that has too many prerequisites? Why are we doing that? It's not compassionate development. It's lazy. I hate that. I hate that. I spent a long time developing this to try and convey some efficiencies to users who need them. Why should you be messing with FTP and files? It's unsavory. Why should you do that? You can actually screw up your website and not know what you screwed up by doing that. This is a more defensive way to do it. You won't screw up your website irreparably through this interface. You can't. And not only that, instead of files and stuff that can break with this HTML editor, CSS editor, there's a skin data manager here. You can back up and restore and import and export your designs with this system I am showing you now. You know, what's the why here? The why is the existing environment to do stuff with your website is too technically challenging. It doesn't serve you. So this is the scaffolding underneath Focus. This is what it is. This was made to serve you. This is the why. The why is that these templates are more efficient than WordPress templates. They can render faster. They can provide more flexibility so that, for example, when we look at the HTML source of our web pages, I want you to look at this. Even if you're not a developer, you don't ever look at HTML, you don't know, look at this, just look how streamlined this is. This is neat and organized. There's some very specific indentation. You can see some patterns that emerge just from scrolling this code. And look at this top area. This is known as your website head, the HTML head. If you look at, I encourage you to go out after you watch this video, go look at WordPress websites. Go look at what the head looks like on a normal WordPress website. It looks like absolute crap, a jumbled mess. You would not even be able to fit it on an entire document head on, I'd say any WordPress website you want to pull up. You will not be able to fit an entire document head. It will not fit on your monitor. You are seeing this entire document head right here, soup to nuts, the whole thing, boom. There's little challenges here. I don't want to go into all this because it's not relevant to everybody. But for example, I'm just gonna highlight one of them. Here's the CSS file that determines the design of Focus. There's plugins and stuff that get loaded up here. Some these plugins generally will load files after the main theme style sheet, which makes it very hard to overwrite the styles that come after it. So it'd be better, for example, for doing hardcore customizations, to have all that crap from WordPress plugins, CSS files, or whatever else that they load up. It would be nice if that stuff appeared before the CSS from your theme. And with WordPress, if you were operating without Focus, with a standard WordPress environment, you'd have to do a bunch of custom code to do this. And every time something new was added, you would still have to go in and tweak all of that stuff and make sure that everything was where it was supposed to be, if you're going to try to improve your working environment at all. Or you could just accept it and deal with the largesse and the bloat that results from that. But like with this environment that I have showed you, and I've talked about the flexibility of it, that is not present in the WordPress system, you can automatically move all your plugins, CSS, and stuff above the style sheet, creating an easier customization environment for you. Now, I realize that's a little bit in the weeds, not going to be relevant to anyone but developers, and that's fine, but I just want to make that point to illustrate that there are some underlying efficiencies here, tons of them. I have spent years on this. Tons of them that make it easier to do what we all need to do. We all need to customize. We all need to integrate email forms. A lot of us want to try and do commerce on our websites. There's all these little performance prerequisites that we've got to make sure we are hitting. This environment is set up so that you can nail all of them. Not some of them. It would be nice if, no. Every single performance optimization that I deem to be reasonable can be done with this platform. And I say that I deem to be reasonable. The only thing I don't think is reasonable is Google's suggestion that you split up your style sheets so that the stuff that appears at the very top and that renders immediately covers what is visible above the fold when people visit your website. I think that particular optimization is insane and not worth anybody's time because it creates a less efficient CSS environment to manage. But outside of that, and we are talking a litany of stuff that matters far more, this focus environment, the why it exists, it has been built to make it so that you can do it all correctly. It's kind of like school, right? You can remember school. And let's say there's a project in school, and the only people who get A's on this project were extremely thorough. Extremely thorough. You know, you could have something pretty nice, and the teacher gives you a B because you didn't tick all the little boxes, all the tedium. You know, a lot of times this is referred to as the last 10% of a project. The first 90%, smooth sailing, all the cool stuff happens in that first 90%, but that last 10% is grit. You got to want it. It's stuff that you're not really necessarily going to see, but it's stuff that at the end of the day, when you put it all together, it makes all the difference in the world. That is what focus is. Focus is the final 10% for your website. This is what you have needed. You have been seduced by the promise of being able to do whatever you want, only to smash into the wall of reality later that is a super slow website that is too... all these customizations existing in custom files, all this code, all this stuff that you cannot manage. That environment is untenable, and you know it. That is why focus exists. There is a why behind this. The design isn't just a fancy subjective thing that I like the way this looks. This design has emerged from the current landscape. All this stuff you can do with your site, these template management systems, backing up, restoring your design, stuff that adds peace of mind, stuff that makes it so that I can help you at scale. I can provide answers to all the common things you're going to want to do. And I can provide answers with certainty. Not just like, oh, I'm sort of here to help you out. Hopefully I can help. No, I can provide you answers with certainty. I know this is the best solution. I also know this solution preserves performance and works for you. It will be easy to maintain. You can roll this stuff along forever. It's sustainable. That's the why behind focus. There it is. The WordPress ecosystem has developed over the last few years in a way that is ultimately broken. It's promises of more. And all that more adds up to at the end of the day is you can't afford it, you can't maintain it, and it's too slow and you don't know how to fix it. That's what more has gotten you. It is time for less. Focus, in reality, focus is not less. Like I said, focus is the final 10%. It's all that stuff that no one else pays attention to that when you take it all together and you add it up at the end of the day, you've got something that's so much better than what everybody else has, you can't even compare the two. Focus, amazing performance. Unmatched performance. If you're one of these people that goes into webpagetest.org or Google PageSpeed Insights and you're trying to, get those numbers up as high as you can get them, this is the ultimate tool for doing that. This is performance first. This is you first. You first. You need performance. You need to be able to customize your website. We know this. But you need to be able to do so in a way that is going to be maintainable and sustainable and is going to work. You don't want to have a bunch of what they call dependencies. If you tweak one thing and it breaks, or it breaks other stuff, that happened because there's all these dependencies. If you update something and other stuff breaks, it's because there were dependencies there. If you want to operate over a long time, you need to minimize dependencies. The WordPress ecosystem has not developed in a way to minimize dependencies, quite the opposite. Over the last 5 years, the WordPress ecosystem has put a premium on dependencies. It has said you will need to invite all of these you need to dance around all these dependencies and work with them. It's like this constant juggling act. But the problem is, like I said, that doesn't serve you. You are not technically skilled. You do not know how to fix some of these large problems that occur. You don't understand the web of entanglements that these dependencies have wrought. You don't have the ability to hire an agency to help you try and undo this. You've already put so much into your website. How are you in this hole now? It's because the landscape has not served you. It is time to make a choice that's in your favor, to take some power back, take some control. Operate with the system that has parameters that you can manage. This is that system. You are looking at it. This is the design of the future. This is this is what has emerged from the explosion of the WordPress ecosystem over the last few years and all the problems that have come along with it. A right answer was bound to emerge. You are looking at it. And so the why of focus, now you know what the why is. The why is the system was broken, hopelessly broken, and you guys, you are bearing the brunt of the weight of that brokenness. It's all getting lumped onto your shoulders. Oh, yeah, you want to do this with your website? Well, sorry, your website's broken. You can't get there from here anymore. It's no good. I don't like that cost has been shifted to you all. That cost should be borne by developers. People like me, doing the heavy lifting, doing the hard work, being able to say, okay, we might want this, but we have to do this. That's discipline. And there's not much discipline in the WordPress environment. It's all these promises of more. Like I said, more. That is not discipline. Discipline is less. Discipline is understanding what the landscape is and what you can do to operate at your maximum within it. That requires some discipline. The answer to that scenario I proposed is not always more. The answer is a lot of times smarter, sometimes more restrained, sometimes doing things a little bit differently. But the first step to improving this is to acknowledge, hey, this is the way it is. I do need to do these things. I need to make some of these adjustments. I need to take on things I can control and not be taking on things that I cannot. There's a line between, what's reasonable and what's not. And all this stuff is sort of tempered and, put on the straight and narrow by the requirements that we all share. The requirements are people are on mobile devices now. Screens are smaller. Speed's at a premium. You can only do so much. This is the reality. Focus exists to serve the reality of building a website and running a website in the ever-changing WordPress ecosystem in 2019 and beyond. This is the answer you have been waiting for. It may not look like you anticipated. It's not a ton of promises of more. The only promise I am making you is that if you want to run a high-performance website that will work and will satisfy your needs, and that is built defensively so that you are not digging yourself into these technical holes you will never be able to get out of, this is what you need. You start with this and you build out from here. This is a perfect foundation. This is not a broken foundation full of a bunch of promises, full of a bunch of you might be able to do thises that make your website more bloated and slow and hard to maintain. No. This is the ultimate streamlined, performant, optimized foundation. This is where you need to start. This is how you can get to where you want to go.